to welcome all of you to the April 3rd, 2019 meeting of the Clearwater Downtown Development Board. Agenda item number 1 is a call to order. We'll move on to item number 2. Actually, do we not have the introduction of the...
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah.
Sorry. Let's do our customary introduction of the board members and ex officio members, beginning on my left.
Raymond Casano.
Lena Teixeira.
Venkat Devnani.
Paris Morphopoulos.
Stu Showerman.
Caitlin Jamil.
Hoyt Hamilton, it says Paul Glaze, but Jay will be taking over after we vote tomorrow night. So as of today, I'm still here.
You're not Jay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay, very good. We'll move on to item number 2, and I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the March 6th, 2019 DDB meeting.
So moved.
Very good. Do we have a second?
Second.
Very good. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? It is carried unanimously. We'll move on. Item number 3, this is for citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. Please come up, state your name and address, and please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Bill Johnson, 2694 Redford Court West in the countryside area, and I'm a downtown volunteer and cheerleader. And there's a lot to cheer about right now. Thank you to Ms. Teixeira for advising me to go see the Dolly exhibit. It is fantastic. I had no idea what it really was until I got there, and thank you to KnowBe4 for providing the technology for that. Of course, the Harbor View Center is changing rapidly as we speak, and even the overhead lighting of the canopy on Miss Panagoulis' building adds more life to that part of the building. We need to get tenants in there. I would say that I've been working with at least 2 businesses to try to get them to implement the blade signs or the shingle signs and the under canopy signs that are so important to orient people who are pedestrians to find their way around downtown. And then lastly, I ask Anne to forward to the board members some photos of the Philadelphia Spruce Street Harbor Park, and also to Halifax Park. Both of them are active waterfront areas. One of the things that was recommended in the conceptual plan, and the conceptual plan actually identified the first key steps. One was passing the referendum, that was done. The second one was to build the brand, and the third was to establish a conservancy. Doing this kind of thing, part of activating the brand was having things happen now. Some of these things are very easy to do, and perhaps the Downtown Development Board would see those as an opportunity for you as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Welcome, Thomas.
Sorry, I'm late.
Okay. Let's move on. Are there any other citizens to be heard? Very good. We'll move on. Item number 4, new business items. 4.1. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the February 2019 financial statement for filing.
So moved.
Very good. Do we have a second? Very good. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? It's carried unanimously. Item 4.2, post-event report, Santa and Suds, Sean Bellinger and Pete Scalia, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Pete Scalia. I'm the Executive Director for St. Vincent de Paul Community Kitchen and Resource Center, and I guess the Director of the Saturday and Sons race as well. So last year was the first time that I came before you. Sean, in his generosity, basically gave that race to us so that we could have a fundraiser. And so we had never done it before, so we had a lot of questions that we had to answer for ourselves, getting one under our belt. As it turns out, it was a pretty successful event. We had over 300 entry people to the race. We had about 600 people, actually 500 to 600 people down in downtown Clearwater for the day. Our budget was $10,000. Well, we found out our budget would be $10,000 is what it cost us to put the race on. But we ended up producing $17,000 of revenue, so we made $7,000 in fundraising for the Community Kitchen Resource Center. And on a side note, I don't know, some of you may know this, just on the 8th of March, we opened up the job training. The old CHIPS building was reopened, and it's a new job training program. And we had 17 homeless people get into the program. And as of 5:30 this evening, 9 of them are still in that program, and it looks like they're going to graduate in 2 weeks.
Nice.
So all of that is connected, obviously, Susana and Suds, and so we want to come back and do it again next year and build it up and make it a little bit better. One of the things that we did do was to, rather than make it just a race that was kind of like a street party, although it was a street party, we actually spent the money so that we would become a legitimate 5K. We had the timed race. We did everything that we needed to make the race appealing to runners. And so that's what we're planning on doing. We want to build the race as a legitimate 5K race to keep continuing attracting runners, and also make it a block party. The one additional thing I think we'll be doing this year to help push it even further is I have a very good connection. I'm on the sales committee of the Outback Bowl. And that week, that last week between Christmas and New Year's, the Outback Bowl comes to town. The teams from the two different cities, competing cities, come to town. So I believe we're going to be able to get linked onto their site. So people traveling down to the Clearwater, St. Pete, Tampa region for the bowl game will be able to see in advance that there's a 5K. So the runners who want to participate will be able to participate, and hopefully that'll bounce the numbers even more. I brought a couple of pictures from our website so you could see. Again, this was our first shot out of the box, so it may seem a little bit unprofessional. In some cases it was, but we learned a lot. And so I'm looking forward to next year's event being pretty successful this year.
Good. I have a question.
Any questions?
Can you tell us a little bit about the street party and what that was?
After the race, people said Tony's Pizzeria supplied pizza for every... Should I...
Continue.
Okay. Tony's Pizzeria supplied pizza, and Clear Sky provided beer for all of the runners. That was part of the race. And so the runners stayed for that, and then the party just built around those two storefronts and was out into the street. By 7:30, everything was over. 7:30, 7:45. There was still business downtown, but the street was back up and open, and everything was back to normal.
7:30 in the evening.
7:30 in the evening, yeah.
Very good. Any other questions, anyone? Any comments? Okay, well, thank you for...
Okay, thank you very much.
Very good. Item 4.3, discussion regarding the DDB bylaws and code. Elise Winters, our attorney. Welcome, Elise.
When I put together that report, Elise Winters, when I put together that report for you all, I had been asked 3 questions. When the CRA sunsets, can the DDB still exist? And yes, it can. There will need to be some changes in the ordinance where we're tied to the CRA, but you know, that's not the original ordinance, and the original ordinance didn't mention the CRA. The DDB pre-existed the CRA, and it can exist afterwards. Any organization looking at long-term planning and at major changes needs to ask 3 questions. 1, can it still exist? 2, and I'm telling you the legal answer is yes. 2, should it still exist? And I've been on several organizations that went through that major question. And in order to determine whether or not it should still exist, it's your job to decide what would it be its purpose. Why, if it has no purpose, it should no longer exist. If it has a purpose, it should. And the purposes of the DDB actually for redevelopment, for protecting property values, those would still be legitimate. It's just in the purpose, it ties it all to curing blight. And what you have to decide is if blight is no longer an issue, and hopefully it won't be, but if blight is no longer an issue, what is your purpose on those issues, on redevelopment, on maintaining development, on maintaining property values? Do you still have a purpose? And that's not a legal decision, that's a you decision. And it's going to take long-term planning and thought. And the final question is, if it should still exist, should it be in this format or should it be in another format? Okay? This format comes with a lot of regulation. To me, that's a good news, bad news type of thing, that you do not have in a voluntary organization. You guys are elected public officials. You are required to comply with all of the obligations of any other elected public official. You have a higher standard. Any board member, volunteer, whether it be a voluntary organization or elected public official, has an obligation of good faith dealing. Yours goes a little bit further. You've got the sunshine law that you have to look at. You have to be aware that everything you do has to be out in the open. So you have those regulations that you wouldn't have if you were another volunteer downtown organization. You have reporting requirements. You have meeting requirements. And once again, these make your life more complicated, but I think it's, that's the bad news. The good news is I think it makes you more effective. The thing you definitely do not have if you decide to change your format, and once again, you've already answered the question, if you've gotten this far, as to whether or not you should exist. If you decide to change the format, you won't have those tax monies. You will be another downtown Clearwater volunteer organization. So it'd be easier, would you be effective? And I don't know if you all have had time to read this report. I don't want to go through the whole report for you. Do you have questions?
Yes, I have a question. The act that established the DDB, an act of the legislature, in its preamble or in its preface, talked about resolving blight or eliminating or alleviating the blight that existed in the downtown. Now, let's say that at some point that becomes clear. I'm not sure how who it would become clear to and how that would be determined that there was no more blight. Does it sunset automatically at some point? Or?
No. Your purpose in the original legislation, and I'm sorry, I didn't bring a copy of that with me,
right.
But your purpose in the original legislation is very similar to your purpose in the ordinance, the brief statement of purpose.
Right.
The longer language, it is different, but the brief statement of purpose is that, hold on, I do have that in here. The brief statement of purpose, which I'm not finding at the moment, but I do remember, is that you are to help downtown develop and redevelop and to protect property values. Now, they tied it to blight, but it is not, but it is not necessarily part of it. This is not one of those entities that will automatically sunset, okay? So, when you are looking at your purpose, the important areas for you guys to look at when you're determining whether or not you should continue is the laundry list in the ordinance. The laundry list of purposes, the laundry list of powers, and how relevant they will be. How relevant are they now? You should be looking at them now. How relevant are they now? And how relevant will they be to you in the future? And that's where you need to be concentrating.
Right. Now, does the board itself have the power legally to alter, to amend Or
You
to-
can amend your
we can propose-
bylaws with the consent of the property owner. All you can do on the ordinance is to go to the city, because it's the city's ordinance.
Right.
So if you wanted an amendment to the ordinance, and I think there's one you definitely need right now, even in the short term, is you need an amendment to say what happens in a tie in an election. But that's nitty gritty, that's not high purpose. What you need to do, if you decide that there have to be changes, is you need to have a well thought out proposal, and you need to give it to the city commission.
Right.
Okay, you can't do that without them. But this is not the period I went through on when I was on this board. It's you have a good relationship with the commission, you have a good relationship with the CRA, and if there are changes that make sense, this is probably the time to ask that they be made.
Right. Very good. I'm currently, as the rest of the board is aware, I'm currently engaged in drafting changes, proposed changes to the bylaws and the code. And when a draft is prepared, then it will be submitted to the rest of the board for their revision and suggestions, at which point we'll propose it to the city. So we may call upon you in the meantime.
You may want to have a workshop to go through that for that purpose, because you are, as a board, going to need to talk about overall purpose.
Mm-hmm.
The laundry list is after you know where you want to go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's in progress. Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Liz. Okay, now we're on item number 4.4, and this is the 2019 DDB funding request form as we annually review it. And please lead us through that.
Sure. 2019 funding request form is part of this packet on the start. And I made the comments, or I made the changes per the comments that the board discussed at the last meeting. We changed a couple of things, and I had a revised copy at your seat because I left out a few words in my working to get the agenda up on the system.
Doesn't look like your mic works. There is no amplification. It's just your very own voice.
Okay, can you hear me now?
That's actually much better.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. So as I said, I made the changes per the comments that the board made at the last meeting. Some of the things that we changed was that we added merchant-driven events should be submitted by the 15th day of the month to be considered at a future meeting. We added the category business-driven event or program. We added on number 10 on page 2, submittals without a budget will not be accepted for consideration. That will help me direct people to that line when they submit something. Under number 16, instead of making it so that each organization has to use the signs, they have access to the signs. That makes it a little bit easier for those organizations to not have to hire a truck to get 16 signs and place them. So I'm asking for your approval to take the revised form and send it out and make it available to merchants who want to have events. And people, I will tell you, when I sent this document out to the merchants, I've had some positive comments, and people are talking about some of the events that they'd like to do in their stores.
Good. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the revised funding request form.
So moved.
Second.
Very good. Is there any other discussion, any comments, any questions anybody has for Ann? Any comments on the form? I notice that it's much shorter than it used to be, which is very good. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you, Ann. Okay, we're moving on to item 5.1, CRA updates. Mr. Micah Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Couple updates. One for the CRA proper. We have completed the first incentive period after our October program was installed. It was a time-limited program which applications expired, or you had to apply by 3/1, so March 1st. We received 2 complete applications, one of which our staff group has recommended for approval. The other one, had some issues related to the timing that it was open, so staff did not recommend that item for approval. It's going to go to the council, the CRA, in 2 weeks. So we'll 2 weeks from Monday at the very least. So we'll see if that's approved at the CRA level, and then we'll begin funding agreement, the creation of the funding agreement document. So at the same meeting, we plan to discuss the future of the incentive program. What tweaks do we need to make? How do we want to enhance it, or does it work? So that's a conversation we want to have with the council and see what everybody's thoughts are. The other update I wanted to give you was on Imagine Clearwater. We have been having meetings this week. Actually back into February 25th, we had our first meeting with Duncan Webb of Web Management Services, who provided us a market study for the area. Monday we had a follow-up meeting with Mr. Webb, who provided some financial feasibility numbers and the business plan, a general business plan that we will now sort of fit into our community, but a very detailed business plan that we can try to put into action. So that there were numbers included in that. I will have the report forwarded to this group so that you can see it as well. We actually just received the final report this afternoon, right before I got here. So we'll get that out to you so you can take a look at it and be happy to come back and talk to you about it as best we can at a future meeting. So tomorrow we'll be asking for some direction on size and scope of the amphitheater from the council, and provided there's sort of definitive direction by the council, we'll start working up a work order for the next phase of design for the amphitheater. And we're going to be talking to the council a little bit about whether or not there are other elements that they would like us to take a harder look at or not. So that'll be another conversation point for tomorrow, and hopefully in a couple weeks we'll get a work order back from Stantec, and we'll continue on with design. We have been actually doing design off of the previous work order to date, so we never really stopped, but it certainly has slowed down for a little while we were trying to determine the size and scope of that amphitheater. But that's what I have for you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great. Anyone on the board?
Oh, I actually have one more. The CRA was renewed. That's an important one. CRA was renewed in March by the county. So we are going to be good for another 15 years. So there's not an immediate concern of the CRA going away and having any impact on the downtown development board as well.
Excellent. Questions, anyone? Okay, thank you. Did you have a comment, Dave? You look like you wanted to say something. Okay. Well, I'm glad the CRA continues its existence. Okay, let's move on to item 5.2, the DDB work plan update. And you had some introductory remarks first.
Rosemary is going to discuss from a discussion of, a new system. I have to turn the microphone on each time. So Rosemary's going to discuss the promoting downtown with y'all, and she has a presentation, and I have some remarks when she's done.
Hi folks, Rosemary DeMoore with the CRA, also very excited the CRA is still in existence. So I have a brief presentation today, but I very much want this to be a conversation, so feel free to stop me at any point. There's several points for folks to weigh in, but I prepared a brief outline for you just based on some of our conversations on how we'd want to be promoting downtown through the DDB. So just to get started, I thought I would walk through the CRA's editorial strategy, which we underwent for the first 6 weeks of 2019 to kind of inform our conversation. So we have a lot of conversations about perception of downtown Clearwater within the CRA. And we came up with an editorial strategy because we feel that storytelling and being present in the conversation is a very important aspect of improving that perception of downtown. So the priorities for our storytelling for 2019 are the three that you see here: business and merchant success stories, inclusive and vibrant public spaces, and the role of arts and culture in downtown revitalization. So we came up with those three storylines under the guise of the three goals that we have for the CRA, which is to shift perceptions of downtown, to increase foot traffic, and also to increase private investment in downtown. So we do have, this was again all to, as we're coming up with an editorial framework and editorial strategy, we're thinking about how our content might better serve residents and visitors to downtown, and also how we might position downtown Clearwater in the national conversation about the future of cities. What's happening in downtown is actually very similar to challenges that face mid-sized markets across the country. A disinvestment in downtown core, increased suburbanization, so we have a lot in common with a lot of folks around the country, and so if we can find connections there and commonalities, that'll just help amplify the work that we're doing here. So we have 6 messages that all of our stories are hitting on at some point throughout 2019. And these are, we want hammered home with not only the CRA staff, but with everybody who comes in contact with us, but how downtown Clearwater is moving from vacant to vibrant, how it's moving from quiet to lively, it's hosting a variety of events and not just one particular type of event, how it is arts infused, that it is a welcoming place, and that downtown Clearwater is moving from disconnected to connected. And we have a variety of channels and approaches that we're using and tactics to disseminate our stories and to tell our stories throughout 2019. Traditional media obviously plays a very crucial role in that. They have the biggest megaphone, the biggest audiences, so media relations is an important component for us. But also we're increasingly looking at how we might be able to host content on our website. We'll have a blog launching later this year. We're increasingly using social media, including paid content on social media, and email as well. We have a current subscriber list of about 2,500 individuals who get regular updates from the CRA on a monthly basis. And we think that subscribers are a really important component because these are people who are asking to get information about us. And so how we can grow that audience over the next year is going to be a really important part for us. So I've had a chance to connect with most of you informally or informally throughout the past couple of weeks and talking about what the DDB's goals are and how we might want to be promoting downtown, and understanding that the overarching goal for the DDB is to support activities that advance downtown revitalization and attract and retain businesses and residents. There are obviously a variety of tactics that you can use to do that, but one thing that I'm hearing from folks as we have these conversations is that there's a definite interest and a need to have some sort of product this year, to have something tangible to take away, some sort of story from the DDB that you would want to project for folks, both in downtown and then also nationally. I also think that there are 2 kind of key areas of opportunity, both within downtown and then within the DDB itself. Capacity building in terms of digital storytelling and digital marketing, and then also increasing awareness of downtown as an area to invest.
Could you amplify a bit on capacity building? I didn't quite catch what you meant by that.
Capacity building in terms of digital marketing and media literacy around how you might use digital products, how you might use social media, how you might use email, not just for DDB but also for downtown merchants to increase their visibility and increase their revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know why I hit that. Sorry. Okay, so part of the conversation has been on rebranding. That's a topic that's come up quite a bit. And I thought I would kind of walk through some examples of rebranding that I've seen in other areas. And so one example obviously is in Austin, Texas, the Keep Austin Weird slogan and campaign that was started by the Austin Independent Business Alliance in 2000, which is kind of rolled out into a massive citywide identity that everybody has adopted in that area. If you've been to Austin in the last few years, it's just omnipresent. Weird. In Copenhagen and Denmark, there was the Open Copenhagen. You can see a snapshot of the campaign there. It was a button campaign that tied to multiple programs. It was for tourism, it was for business, it was for events. Everybody was united under one brand that was also extremely customizable for folks, and people could adapt their button specifically to what they were working on. Just a few examples of things that have worked in other cities. But what they all have in common is a shared vision, top down. They also have a very clear and omnipresent objective, a defined target audience. There may be multiple audiences within this campaign or within an initiative, but those audiences are always very clearly defined. It's not everyone age 18 to 65. It's sliced into very specific demographics. There's also a very strong identity. So the city's values, its assets, the qualities that separate, those come through very clearly in any sort of rebranding campaign. And also strong imagery, which means high quality production and creating something that sticks with you, not just in passing, but also something that you carry with you as you, whether or not you are a resident or a visitor to the space. So this is where we get interactive and we start to talk about what your thoughts on rebranding are. Number one, is rebranding the right fit? Is that something that we think that the DDB would be interested in pursuing? Do we have consensus on those 5 things mentioned before, on a shared vision, on a clear objective, who are the defined target audiences are, the city's identity, and what kind of images would want to be used? Is that something that we have consensus for here? If we're looking at objective, is it attracting major investments? Is it changing perceptions? Is it some combination of the two? In terms of target audiences, until you have a defined objective, you don't really know that. Also, what does success look like? What are the benchmarks that we have established? Is it looking at dollar amounts that are invested in downtown? Is it a sentiment analysis, looking again at that perception issue? Are people starting to talk about downtown in a more positive way? How do we measure that? And then how are we also giving folks clear destinations and clear pathways? We have downtownclearwater.com, we have email as an option, we have social media, we have traditional media. What are other avenues we might want to pursue? And then also the conversation on marketing versus public relations. I think today it's really a mix of both. I think you'll rarely find a marketing agency that's not doing some form of public relations, or a public relations firm that's not doing some aspect of marketing. But as we talk about what a marketing or a PR firm might do, is starting to develop that identity for the city. In this instance for downtown, is looking at the history, looking at its residents, our geography, our quality of life, culture, our schools, tourism, main streets. The ultimate identity, is Clearwater defined as a city of opportunity? Is it a growing hub for business and tourism? What are the assets? And then again, going into that strong imagery conversation. So that's where I want to kind of lead into a brainstorm with all of you, looking at what does existing promotion currently look like, what have been the activities that have worked for the DDB in the past, and what might you want to pursue in the future. So with that, I can leave it open, or I can offer some suggestions.
Okay. We had voted as a board to provide some funding in the PR area in our last budget. And we really didn't have any basis for determining what the size of that amount should be. So we just picked an arbitrary number. Mm-hmm. Are you aware what that number is?
I believe it's 25,000.
Okay. Now, is that enough or too much, or the right, what's the Goldilocks number for finding out?
Well, I think that also depends on what the objectives are, right? So I think if...
well, assuming that that's the amount that we've set aside, what are realistic objectives for that amount of money?
I'm so glad you asked, because the next slide has the things that I was thinking about. So I'm thinking for 2019, there's definitely an opportunity for experimentation, because I think because we haven't quite reached some of those key objectives or some of those defined audiences, this is the time to sort of throw things against the wall and see what sticks. So I think in terms of the capacity building aspect, there's definitely an opportunity to train downtown Clearwater stakeholders to tell their own stories. That could be through things like digital media skills training courses, digital media marketing cheat sheets that are developed, offering training or lecture series on digital media marketing so that folks can come together and learn how to learn these skills themselves, and kind of be an inclusive process for everyone in downtown. And then there's also an opportunity to increase awareness of offerings in downtown Clearwater through something like a video series that's focused on improving the perception of downtown as an area to invest. I think for $25,000, just for an example, The Google Academy for Ads, or MOOCs, are free. The Udemy Digital Marketing Masterclass is $200 a person. So for a $5,000 budget, you can train 25 individuals or businesses, and that leaves $20,000 left over for a video campaign, which I think is very realistic. If you wanted to create 3 30-second to 2-minute videos highlighting downtown Clearwater in the vein of what cities were doing to promote their downtowns for the Amazon HQ2 that they went through, I believe it was 2017 and 2018. So there is money to do that, I think, in the $25,000 range, but this is the time to experiment and see what are those objectives, who are those audiences you want to reach, and then really track those results so that next year you can put significant funds towards marketing or PR agency to accomplish X, Y, or Z. But until you have that clear objective lined up, I think it's more about experimentation.
Okay. Now, does anyone else?
Can we see your first slide again? I mean, because I think there are two things there that make sense talking about.
Which first?
Maybe your second slide.
This one?
I'm looking here. Sorry.
After that?
Keep going.
I think he's talking about the one that was up, the next to last one,
You can,
or
Whoa, back
thoughts
up.
on DDB.
This one.
Thomas,
Yeah.
you can face forward now. It's on the screen there.
Okay. Rebranding is absolutely something we need to focus on. And that's part of the changing perceptions that would attract major investors. So to me, that's one ball of wax that needs to be put together, and that's where I would start. I'm not a marketing or branding person, but I think that that's what your job is. So if we're going to rebrand, attract major investment, what's your guidance for us?
I would say, again, that 2019 is about experimentation then. And then you use those. I don't think the $25,000 is enough for a full downtown rebrand. If you're looking to create strong images, if you're looking to create significant video campaigns, I don't think that you get to that full number or that full objective of changing perceptions with that number. I do think that you can do a lot with that, though. You can do a lot in the course of the next 6 to 8 months, that you can see what's working and what's not. You can see the opportunity for social media to generate revenue or to increase awareness of downtown as an area to invest. That's the goal for a few specific video campaigns. But in coming up with something like an Open Copenhagen or a Keep Austin Weird, that's a much kind of broader project that I think would be multi-year and would also require a bit more significant investment.
Well, Rosemary, is it appropriate to ask if you could come back to us with a roadmap on how we would accomplish that set of steps there?
Yes, yeah.
Because none of us are marketeers, to my knowledge, somewhat, but I speak for myself then. I don't know how to achieve rebranding or how we should go about it or what the resources necessary are. Same with the next step and the step after that. I don't even know what the correct sequence is. So we need like fairly bite-sized steps of what can we do and what the timeline would look like and what it would probably cost us over the long term, maybe in annual increments or something, just so we can wrap our heads around what we're looking at as an overall project. Go ahead.
While reading your notes, I agree that the storytelling is very important, especially since it's, I think the grassroots, organic efforts are going to be, I think, one of the most successful ones. The thing that I find frustrating is that we've had plenty of opportunity for positive storytelling and we've lost those opportunities. And I can set 3 examples. We have had wonderful artists, including Cecilia, who did the wall. She has other murals, and when she did them in St. Pete and other locations, it was celebrated. It was unveiled. There was an event. That is storytelling. The Dali Museum, an internationally acclaimed pop-up, has been there since January. 98% of the people I talk to don't know it's there. That was a lost opportunity for a great storytelling. Even the Harbor View. I was expecting a party. My understanding was that there was $10,000 allotted. We were all waiting for that event, and I was underwhelmed. And that is the word that's always being told to me, that even when we have positive things to celebrate, we don't, or it's underwhelming. We have the sculptures that are not being celebrated, the wonderful mural at the parking lot. International artists are coming here, and no one knows about it. So you're right, storytelling is important, but before we start coming up with this big, huge rebranding, I think we need to re-examine about our process in place now. We have plenty of opportunities to tell wonderful stories about our great city, and it's not being done, in my mind, appropriately or to the level that I would hope it would be.
That is the problem. There's nothing being done. So it's kind of like we're looking for a plan, but we don't have a plan. We keep studying things, and I know you're new to the role, new to the area, but some guidance in terms of if we want to rebrand, if we want to be good storytellers, I think you have to tell us how to do it. Okay? And we'll come up with the money. I wouldn't worry about the budget. Okay? There's a lot of money that has been carved out for a change that this board has said we want to de-emphasize, if you will, supporting a lot of events, but we want to do something bigger and different in the way of marketing downtown. And I'll give you a place to start. Let's get rid of that stupid logo.
I was going to mention logo, because I think any rebranding or any idea shift, paradigm shift, has to come with a new logo. And when I saw that Open Copenhagen, I thought of, I'm rough on this, okay? Clear, and then the water spelled out in water, like clear water, and then maybe in the background a mock-up of the new downtown waterfront, and keep it simple, clear water, because that's our value here. We have Clearwater Beach, we have the Intercoastal, people come here for the water, and I think starting that way, and that's inexpensive, by the way, it's a really good logo, and maybe a jingle for the logo, and then we can use that as a foundation to start all the other marketing and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that ties.
And it's fun, like the Open Copenhagen, that was kind of cool. We want to keep it fun, light. We have the #1 beach in the country. Let's hit our plus points, and everything else I think will follow.
David.
I want to give you my 2 cents, probably what it's worth. I think it's too early for talking about branding, because we went through this, you guys were on the board with me years ago, and it really hadn't been, we have a successful 400 block, but we're not there yet to really put a brand together and say, here we are. I think the storytelling is where we ought to concentrate our money in, because we get that out there, people, and you need to bombard it over and over again. You can't just make something and say, here we are for one thing. It's going to be a constant thing, because people need constant repetition of these things before sometimes it sinks in, because everybody's got their own life and they're busy with their own circles, and they might not pick it up right at first. I think it's a positive thing that's going on here, but we aren't right at the time to really get a logo, a pizzazzy logo, because we really aren't there yet. That's my 2 cents.
But we have the waterfront. Might be tiny, might be pretty good.
Well, I don't mean logo, I meant branding.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
The new waterfront.
For something costed.
The new downtown. The new logo kind of is like a rebirth.
Okay.
I've been invited to put in my 2 cents. Downtown has, over the last 25 years, had a a challenge in its perception. Branding is what people think of you. It's also what people think of you when you're not there. So if you look at what the city over the last 5 years has been trying to do, is they've done different overlays in different areas. What if you ask the mayor and the city council, what would you like to see in downtown? What they say is they want jobs. They want high-paying, clean jobs so that lots of people come in. At the same time, we want roofs because people living downtown will support the retail areas and you create a vibrant community. Now, all these pieces need to be kind of fitting together in a puzzle, and it's like what comes first. If you look at what the city determined the downtown overlay should be, they said this is an office high-tech environment. So the idea is to attract businesses in that space. And so if you want to do a branding exercise, you want to look at, okay, what are we trying to achieve? Jobs, clean, high-paying, and at the same time you boost your retailers because there's a couple thousand people every day in downtown that can afford to go to a restaurant, those kinds of things. So branding needs to focus on, well, where do you want to wind up? And branding is a 5, 10, 15-year exercise. The last thing you need to begin with is a logo. That is ultimately the result of all your branding exercise and your objective. Now, the logo for downtown, Clearwater as a city has determined it wants to position with the beach, with tourism, which makes total sense because 40% of the economy is tourism. So obviously, now how do you fit your downtown branding in with that? That's the area of experts that understand how you need to survey out where you want to go with this. So ultimately, if you want to do rebranding, I think we should. Are we ready for it? Well, we need to determine exactly what that brand should be. Once you know that, then you can start working on your messaging, et cetera, et cetera. Do we definitely want to attract major investments? Yes. Do we change perceptions if we show downtown Clearwater is the best thing since sliced bread and look at all this economic development here and we're creating thousands of new jobs? Yeah, that's how your perceptions come in. So benchmarks depends on what our city fathers actually want for downtown. So let's start with that. And then identity, well, can you have a smaller identity fitting in the larger, beautiful from Bay to Beach, I think the logo, the tagline is. Well, how does high-tech and clean jobs fit into that? You need to figure that out. So I think what you're saying is right. It is a year of experimentation. 25 G's, guys, is peanuts. If you want to do branding right, start thinking 10, 20, 50 times more. That's the correct amount of money that you want to spend. Could be over 5 years, but somebody mentioned here, people don't immediately understand what this is about. It needs 20, 50, 100 times when they see it, when it finally sinks in. So I think what we should do this year is indeed step through this experimentation / research, find out what we want, and then allocate sufficient budget to actually get it done. I think that's a little more than 2 cents.
That's at least a nickel.
I tend to agree because I think similar to what Stu's saying, I don't know that we have a unified vision. I think if you asked each and every one of us, what do we envision or what's our goal for Clearwater, downtown Clearwater, it's going to be different. We are all going to name, some of us are going to focus on high tech, some of us are going to focus on artistic, some of us are going to focus on the proximity to water and some combination of those, but I don't think we have a unified vision, and I feel kind of bad for Rosemary for us to say, okay, go rebrand and fix it, but we don't know what we want to look like. And so I think kind of taking that experimentation period of time to figure out what sticks, as well as for us to kind of have more of a unified vision based upon that information, and as well as just coming together would be beneficial. Because otherwise, good luck, figure out what we want. Let us know.
Send around a questionnaire.
Someone else, sure.
I think we should focus more on the jobs that because people normally associated downtown with jobs. So we can say that Clearwater downtown has a lot of tech jobs, tech companies, and there are law firms and other professional firms. So people should associate Clearwater downtown back with jobs and restaurants. And I mean, their focus is more on the beach and the restaurants, but the focus should also be on the working population.
Someone else? Okay, so this is all very, very good input. I'm glad everyone is giving their opinion here. You're right, Caitlin. It's not fair to say to you, come back and tell us exactly what we should be thinking about. Mm-hmm. But what I
disagree. I think that's her job.
No. I think basically it's also, we have a certain responsibility to make certain decisions as well. I think her job, the way that Rosemary might help us best, is if you outlined for us what's a logical sequence of steps that we as a board need to go through to arrive at these decisions. Because she can't make the decisions herself. It's the board has to make the decisions in the final analysis. But we lack the expertise of what's the correct sequence and what are the topics and subjects we should be considering and in which order and how much do they cost, just so we can put some realistic analysis to it. I think.
I'm not even very clear on our role. I'll be honest with you.
Well, we have.
How much of a role do we have? I mean, let's say we do have a consensus and we all agree on a vision or an identity or whatever you want to call it, and then we say, okay, Rosemary, that's where I want you to go. We're not the only entity that she is responsible for, right? So what we could do, and correct me if I'm wrong, we can give recommendations, but we are not the only people to put a voice on it. Don't, right? Because even when, like, for example, I look over the tasks that we all agreed on after the workshop, right? I'm looking at the tasks, and even the definition of assigned tasks to me is unclear, because some I've done and some I was relieved of without even asking. I was supposed to be doing the tech, what do you call it? Let's see, yes. Fund art and tech exhibitions, installations, festivals to attract tech workers. That was assigned to me in the CRA. And then when I reached out, I was basically led to believe that it's okay, you don't have to do anything. That goes against my grain. If my name's assigned to a task, I need to start it, be involved, and complete it. So my definition of assigned tasks is different than the CRA's. So we need to go back to that. What is our role before we start? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't even know.
Yeah, but I understand it, and it's a good thing we're having this discussion because we need to clarify this so that we all understand where we're coming from. The way I see our role is that we have been elected and we have a responsibility to all the taxpayers, all the ratepayers in the Downtown Development Board District. And it is our responsibility, not city staff or another department, it's our responsibility to see that those funds are judiciously spent in a direction that will forward the goals of the Downtown Development Board and the code that established it in the first place. And we cannot really abdicate that responsibility and just give it to someone else to do. And I think it would be incorrect to do so, and it would obviate the need for us in the first place. What would be the purpose of us having a board and votes if we just turned it all over to city staff to do? I think we need to inform ourselves or rely on city staff to educate us or to give us guidance on what we need to do. And then we as the board need to take responsibility to make those decisions on the best, information we can gather about it. That's my personal view anyway.
We should work on a gradient together.
Yes.
And make it just a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. I think it'll occur. Without wild shifts, just make it a little bit better.
But
and how would you measure that?
Well, you don't want to get me going because.
No, I'm really asking because I don't think anybody knows, and you're probably the only property owner downtown. Actually,
I'm going to tell you.
No.
I am downtown,
property downtown,
and I am right there. I'm on the 500 block. Beautiful parking lot got painted. They put a beautiful sculpture in front of me. And I know this is a sore subject. And then I got this lady walking by, banging on my window, screaming at the top of her lungs, carrying everything she owns behind her. And I got this guy going by and looking in my window, looking at my lock. And I sit there all day long and I see this. Now, if I was from another city and never been to Clearwater, and I went downtown, Bank America building, our city hall, you know what's in front of it, the park. Now, I understand this is a touchy subject. I understand there's legal problems with it. However, you can make an ordinance. You can't have your entire, everything you own with you and in the park. It's almost like housing violation. I mean, if I did 1/10 of what those guys do, I would be fined. You can't fine them, they have no money. That is a problem. It's a rudimentary problem. And again, pretend like you've never been here and just go downtown. Even when there's a Great Blast Friday, there's a lady laying there with everything she owns right by the sculpture. People walking over her. And, I know there's got to be some. I'm from New York City. I was born in Manhattan. Believe me, there's ways to handle this. Maybe move the feeding 15, 20 blocks away so that some of them hang out there. I hate to see this new waterfront open up and that park's full of, sorry, I know it's touchy, but it's what I see, it's what I hear from people. It's what I hear from tourists. I deal with a lot of people that are moving to Clearwater. I'm the #1 realtor downtown statistically. And that's one of the problems. I've lost sales in Station Square because the wife walks by the homeless and they grunt out some kind of word or something. And believe me, I have empathy for these people. I do. But everything has a place. And I think we need to address that somehow. And believe, I know the police are working on it. I really appreciate it. They're up in the parking deck with their binoculars hoping they do something wrong. But there's got to be some kind of ordinance where you can't have your entire house pulled into the park and live there and then take your home with you when you leave. There's got to be a housing ordinance.
It's a serious issue, but we're straying way off the agenda.
No, we're not, because that's the identity of our city. That's the branding right there.
I know, but we're not going to pass an ordinance or recommend
no, but
as
we can
part of our
maybe
marketing
battle
strategy
plan
today.
some kind of idea. Something.
I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think it fits within the scope of this agenda item.
Well, then where does it fit?
We can propose a future discussion item on where the board can discuss the homeless situation and
it's
propose.
Not the homeless situation, it's where they hang out.
That has very little to do with the discussion on branding, and let's stay focused, otherwise we'll be here for an extended period of time.
I think it does have to do with branding. I think it does have to do with their image.
I think your question was, how would you measure it? Was that your question?
Well, let me put it this way. I don't own real estate in downtown Clearwater, but if I did, what I would want this board to do is secure that real estate and help it grow in value.
Exactly.
And I see a lot of people shaking their head. That's what our goal is. If we're going to attract investors, nobody wants to buy a building that is going to sit there for 20 years and not appreciate in value. And to your point, have homeless people all around. I understand that, right? But I do think it's for a different time. So if we're going to benefit the stakeholders, the freeholders, the taxpayers, we need to help them increase the value of their real estate. And if that happens, then investors will come and put money into downtown.
Well said.
Very, very tough problem, guys. I just came back from San Francisco, trade show. Real estate values in San Fran are 5, 6, 7, 8 times higher than what we have over here. If you see the human wreckage that lives on the streets over there, that you have to walk around, the problem is everywhere. It's not just here. This is a much bigger problem. Not easy to solve. The gentleman who was here earlier who said we got 17 homeless people off the street and in a job program. Now that is really good. We just need more of that. That's how you solve this issue. So ultimately, yes, if you want to have a fantastic downtown and you want to be able to promote it, would it be great to have no homeless in downtown? Yes, it would be great. Is this an achievable goal? It's a tough one.
How does the beach do it?
They have a crowd, so they're not noticeable. See, when you have less people, they're more noticeable.
When I go to the beach, I intentionally go there as a recon mission, as I call it. I go there looking for signs for people to go downtown. There's none that are big. I look for beautiful trolley signs that says, this way to downtown. None. Artwork that says, this way to downtown. None. I look for homeless people. None. So I want to know what the secret is that the beach has that we don't in downtown. What are they doing that we're not?
Hotels and the beach and tourists.
So, logistically speaking, how do they achieve that?
Somehow we got to find out.
Again, we're not here to actually come up with that today. What we're here today is to see if we can make sense out of that and come up with a plan on how we're going to do these things. At some point, fixing that problem is one of the subsets of that list there. What we're trying to find out is what should that list look like and in what order should we address it? We're not actually here today to address it and fix those issues today. We're not here to decide on a brand today or on a logo or any of these things in detail. We're here to decide on a plan on how to achieve all of that. So let's stay focused on that, otherwise we'll be here for a lot longer. It's all good input, but I feel like I'm hurting a little bit to keep you on track. So let's try to stay focused on what we're trying to do. Rosemary, you've been standing up there. You must have had some thoughts.
Well, in terms of the timeline kind of thing, I think outlining objective, audience, and then tactics, I think is the way that we kind of proceed from here. If we can come to some sort of consensus on what the main objectives for the DDB are for this kind of initiative, if we want to, I think rebranding is the ultimate goal we want to get to, and will help with the attracting major investment and changing perceptions issue. But what's the major objective? And then we can move into audience discussion from there of who do we want to target, and then we talk about what are the tactics to reach them. Right? Is it better signage? Is it marketing materials? Is it video? Is it in-person events? What are those specific things? We can build all those tactics out, but without understanding the top-line strategy, it's very difficult to put those tactics into place without just kind of firing off, which is why I think experimentation is something that could be interesting throughout this year, to start with a variety of those tactics so you can see if you put some dollars behind paid, Facebook advertising, this is the return on that investment. If you put paid dollars behind digital marketing cheat sheets for downtown businesses, you can see where those dollars go and see some success from a few of those tactics, and then say, all right, what kind of things would we want to continue with next year as you have that broader objective an audience discussion throughout the course of this year, because I don't think that's something you decide in one meeting. I don't think it's something you decide in two. This kind of needs to be a constant evaluation for everybody. I think there were two folks who are designated on this specific issue or on the specific workshop agenda item. I believe it's Thomas and Stu, right? You guys are the folks on this, so we follow up on this and start to talk about objective, start to talk about audience, and then start to bring forward to future DDB meetings next steps. I think that would make a lot of sense in terms of how we start to structure an approach to get to the rebrand. I don't think we have rebranding Open Copenhagen at end of 2019, but I think we can start to get moving in that direction with some sort of tangible product or some sort of activity that we can say the DDB is working towards for promotion of downtown.
Now, if I can just change the direction a little bit, I asked you earlier and you agreed that you could come up with a series of steps or just a format, an outline format that we could follow that would make logical sense from an expert's point of view. Now, leaving that aside for a moment, because you're going to get back to us on that, we have this marketing budget that we've allocated, and we've discussed doing possibly several videos, doing some training, whatever. That's come as a suggestion from staff. What I'd like to hear right now is any suggestions on whether you like that idea or whether you have a different idea of what we should do with that money. Let's hear some proposals in support of or different ones on what to do with that $25,000 this year so that we can actually move forward with it.
What was it initially earmarked for?
It was not clearly defined. It was just, we're going to allocate $25,000, and in the future, like during this year, we will determine how best to use it, but we want to do some kind of marketing for the DDB. And we want to, it was an initial starting figure. We know that that's not an end goal of, we're going to spend $25,000 and redefine how everybody looks at Clearwater. But it's a start, and in the absence of knowing how much it'll take or what a realistic number is, we just arbitrarily chose that number. So we're looking for ideas now. Should we do 3 videos? If we did 3 videos, what should they promote?
Changing the perceptions to attract major investments.
That's a good one. Do we have alternate viewpoints on what should it be? Like, do we do signs in the trains at the airport saying, how they say, #1 beach, come to Clearwater? That's where a lot of people find out about Clearwater Beach, is when they arrive at the airport and get on the shuttle. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. I'll try to stay focused here. So we need to have some discussion on what target, who do we want to aim these videos to, because that will also determine what channel and also what the message is, what we're trying to do. If we want investment, what are we trying to encourage investment in? Is it in restaurants, in new infrastructure? Do we want new computer companies? What kind of investment are we talking about? And that would, again, define who we sent that message to, because to get it to the right target audience. So I'd like to hear some ideas on what your suggestions might be for the use of these funds.
With 25 Gs, the only thing you really can do is you go essentially do your basic research. Which is what Rosemary is essentially saying. Experimentation is research, is what messaging, who's your audience, what works. You can test for effectiveness, which particular messaging works the best. But, yeah, surveys, yeah. And then your 25 Gs is gone.
But then I see your point. I see your point. The problem is, like many other initiatives we've had in the past in this, not in this board so much, but in the city overall, is we invest in a study, and then there's no money left to actually do anything.
Yeah,
we have another study to put on the shelf. If we want to have a product this year, we have to actually spend the money on something that doesn't just study the problem, but actually gives us a result, a tangible benefit this year.
Yeah, well, in that case, stop with this and give nobody any funding whatsoever, reject every event in downtown, and then you have 400 or 500 grand to do something with.
And then we can promote how lively and eventful downtown is.
Yes, you know, example, right? My company is going next Sunday. We're going to be, by the Tampa Bay Times, we're going to be chosen as best place to work, right, for the 4th year in a row. So we have 8 full-page ads in the Tampa Bay Times to support that imaging. That's 250 G's. So this is the order of magnitude that you have to think with.
Okay,
if you want to do something effective, then stop funding events and throw all that money into a marketing campaign, because that's the only way that you're going to be effective, even closely. So there's something controversial for you.
No, that's good.
I just wanted to make the point that, you know, many of these items that are on the screen here, these promotional efforts, are very consistent with those of the CRA itself. And we, you know, I think it's important not to think of the marketing and the promotional as DDB or CRA, but something together, where CRA's got some funding, you all have some funding as well, and we're aimed at the same goal. I mean, our 18-month strategy at the CRA is to create authentic and positive stories about downtown, very consistent with what we have here. Attract $100 million in private investment, again, very, very consistent here. Permit 600 housing units and begin construction on Imagine Clearwater. All of those really fall in line with many of the things up on the screen. So I think it is a combined effort. Assuming that you agree with sort of the objectives here, we can have a more focused approach to it. I think one of the important things that we need to know, though, if we're going to do that joint effort, is to understand what those benchmarks for success are for you all. When we come back and say, look, we've spent some money, some of it's CRA, some of it's your money, but you know, were we only successful in the eyes of the CRA, or are we also successful in the eyes of the DDB? But I think at the end of the day, it really is a joint effort, because Rosemary's doing it for the CRA. She's got to do one set of promotional efforts for the DDB and one for the CRA. That is very inefficient.
Nonsense.
It doesn't make any sense, at least to me.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
you have to focus. Otherwise, it's going to go nowhere.
So I mean, for me, part of the question is, does that 18-month strategy, of which we're about 6 months into at the CRA level, is it consistent? Does it fall in line with what your objectives are? And I think they are in line. That's the comment I wanted to make.
I'm glad you brought that up, because according to my understanding, the CRA's footprint is the same thing as DDB's, correct?
Not quite.
Enough that
Similar,
it's a lot of it is overlap.
Partially, yes.
And there's a full-time staff that's hired to do that. We are just elected members that meet once a month. So as long as we agree with the path, or at least we're on the same boat, that to me is a perfect argument not to take all our money and give it to a PR company, but rather give it to the events, because the CRA is not there to help the events in that capacity. So instead of overlapping, and just let us have a supportive role to the CRA, but let's not forget the little folks. You know what I mean? I don't think $25,000 being given to a PR company is going to do anything. With that type of money, I think we should really focus on the low-lying fruit, meaning opportunities that are already there and we could supplement.
Thank you, Lena.
Well, I would just say to kind of spin off that of thinking about how you can reframe how the $25,000 is allocated maybe this year, when we're talking about things that are already existing and activities that the DDB is already doing. How do you spend that $25,000 in support of promoting and marketing those specific things, right? And then you track the results from that. You can say, was there an increase in attendance when we put $5,000 in promotion behind this event, X, Y, or Z, whatever it might be, and then compare it to last year and say we didn't spend that same money, or we didn't spend, or this is how we did spend money last year. You can just reframe it if we want to experiment in that fashion this year, knowing that you've already allocated $25,000 towards promotion in some vein, and say if we push it behind activities that we're already doing, but just use it only in terms of marketing and promotion, that's one avenue to use those funds, I think, in a positive way. And then also we can tie in existing efforts in the CRA and bring forward perhaps over the course of the next year, this is what a larger campaign would look like for rebranding. Is this something that the DDB would want to work in concert with the CRA on? I think that could perhaps meet the immediate need of kind of working with the funds that have already been allocated, but then also thinking long-term for what the larger goals for a rebrand might look like.
Very good. More comment?
We really need to look at how much better downtown is than it was 10 years ago. I mean, you look at all the things we should do, but you know, once Grindhouse gets open and we got the new Mexican restaurant right on Cleveland, and Clear Sky's been a great, and Capitol Theater and all these other little places, it is a lot better. The gradient's there. We just want to get the gradient up a little steeper, maybe.
Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, there are probably already videos about Clearwater downtown, living in Clearwater downtown, but I think we should have a fresh 2019 video on why to live in Clearwater downtown, what amenities are there, the new marina, the marina and the new Imagine Clearwater plan. So just a 30-second teaser and then see the response rate in Facebook and Instagram statistics, and then maybe make other videos. My suggestion.
Okay, so that's exactly the kind of suggestion that we're hoping to solicit here. That's one thing. That's a good example of a concrete suggestion. We can make a video of this and direct it to this audience. Another example would be, we're putting a lot of money into Blast Friday. We could have videos or a video that showcases and promotes people to come to Blast Friday, and then we could monitor events this year compared to last year. Or any, I'm not trying to promote one particular thing here, but this is the kind of examples that we're looking for. So one would be to do exactly what you just said. Can we have a couple of ideas on what other concrete things could you say, let's make a video that does this, and here's who we would promote it to via Facebook advertising, Google, whatever. Whatever your idea is. Does anybody have such an idea? We don't have the $2 million to do the full-on thing. What can we accomplish with our 25 grand?
David had an idea.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you guys are hitting it right on the head. Tell the story of the successes that we've had. And if you walk down the street and you see the restaurants I talked to when I was here Friday night, a lot of the restaurant owners that I haven't even been in yet. And now I can't wait to go in there because I've seen them open for, one I thought was open for 6 months. He's been open 4 years. And I feel bad that I haven't been in there. But he's always busy. All these restaurants are great restaurants. And it's like a hidden secret here, When I tell people, oh, go down, you want great sushi, go down to, by the Capitol Theater. They have great, oh, really? There's a restaurant there? It's like, yeah, it's good. So keep repeating the good stuff. And we have stuff now that we can really say that we have. And then also, to Stu's point, that's another hidden secret. And congratulations, by the way. This tech industry that we've built in Clearwater, nobody knows that. So that could be another video. I mean, you could change them up and say, and another, and look at this part of Clearwater and show the face that nobody ever sees.
That very man you're talking about came up with a great campaign for the Merchants Association that we've adopted. It's called Did You Know? And we are using that now in everything. We're communicating to our condos and our residents that way, in our social media, on TV. Did you know? So perhaps we can give the $25,000 to that Did You Know campaign and educate everybody about what's downtown. We have entertainment, we have a theater, we have restaurants, we have bars, we have the Dali Museum, we have a ferry, we have a trolley, and it's a common Did You Know catchy phrase, and then you just switch out the information we want to focus on.
I really like that. Let's align this a little bit closer to what we're trying to do. I really like what you just said. What if, just to nail it down to a specific that we can maybe even go forward on a motion, God willing. Number one, that we create a series of videos, say 3 videos, 4 videos, whatever our budget will carry, depending on what people propose, of 30 to 30-second to 1.5-minute videos on a did you know type concept. And I propose, and subject to discussion here, that one video should be, did you know about these are the places that you can eat at, or these are the varieties or ethnic groups or whatever of types of restaurants in Clearwater. Did you know that Clearwater is a hub of tech innovation and blah, 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 and here are the leading companies and the number of employees and so on. Did you know that blah, 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 and pick a third item, and there's our 3 videos. And there's something concrete we can proceed with, make a decision on, and move forward today.
I just wanted to check with either Rosemary or Adam, that you may know this as well, if we have a sense of what the cost of those videos might be. I just want to make sure that if it's $15,000 each, that we're not doing an unrealistic number of them. So, and Adam has got some background in it, and I think Rosemary does too.
Adam Vance, the Public Communications Station Manager. I mean, it really depends on, how extensive you want to go into these videos, how much storytelling you truly want to get into. I mean, with $25,000, you can certainly turn out, at least 3 or 4 videos, especially with this "Did you know" type of campaign.
And you don't need a long video. It should be at most 30 seconds, because that's what people's attention span is.
Well, and there's multiple platforms and channels that you can think about when you're producing these as well, right? It's a 30-second video that you can run on Instagram, but it can also be on Instagram TV. It's something that we run on Facebook as an advertisement. It's something that we run on Twitter as a promoted post. All these things, that all costs money as well. So that's built into the process, but whatever firm we choose to shoot those videos, they can also be behind that paid promotion as well.
I think if you're going to go out and hire a firm, you're going to end up paying a lot of money for your 30-second spots. Everybody in here has a cell phone. You can shoot your own videos. You can take a GoPro camera. I mean, we have Mr. Fomer Simpson, who shoots a lot of video right in his studio. I think if we had a competition that said, hey, here's a real prize, $2,500, $5,000, for the best video that describes downtown, or did you know, and we're trying to fill in the blank, you'll get a lot of people that will, I'm thinking you might, for that kind of money, you might get a lot of people that would provide content. I'm not a video editor, but if you've got content from everybody on this dais and we put together video, we probably all have something out there that we could use. And that engages the community.
Yes. Make the procuring of the video actually an activity.
Exactly.
Involving the community.
Randy
We have a lot
Gillum,
of
3,000 or 4,000 a video. He's good, and he edits. He has a whole studio.
I would also add that I actually teach a seminar in Oklahoma. In fact, I just got back from it about 2 weeks ago about storytelling, video storytelling. And the root of it is it's about people. You find a good character, you find good moments, and you tell it. And the key really is finding those good characters to help propel that story. And I would respectfully disagree that everybody has a cell phone and they can be a storyteller. You need, if you really want to make this work, you need to have someone who can tell a really, really good story. I actually know of some people here in town that who have multiple Emmys in storytelling, who now own production companies, and I can reach out to them and see if that's something that they would be interested in doing.
So how about this, guys? What if we could do this 2 ways? One, we could have a request for proposals and see who applies, and say if we allocated $5,000 to video and left $10,000 for promotion, that would give us an idea of, like we did $15,000 for production and then $10,000 in whatever it costs to promote it. But another way of doing it is to say, we're having a contest. These are the products, these are the topics that we'll receive submissions on. The top 3 videos will each receive $5,000.
We'll get a lot of videos.
an engagement.
But it might create some stir just on its own, just by having the contest.
Some ideas we didn't think about.
Yeah.
It can. I would just argue on the user-generated content aspect of things. When you're trying to create a viral campaign for those, you have to also consider the adoption and use rate within the area that we're working in. So if there isn't a huge population of folks on Twitter in Clearwater, or if there isn't a huge population of folks on Instagram in Clearwater, having them submit videos through those channels or submit videos in that way can be difficult to reach all of those people or to get the kind of response, like just to kind of weigh people's expectations. Are you expecting 5,000 submissions?
Well, we don't want 5,000 submissions. Who's going to view them?
1 second at a time.
You don't have time for that, Rosemary.
But I mean, so it's something where if it's going to be user-generated content, I think in the spirit of celebrating Clearwater, I think having that just as part of the campaign it could be a really important and interesting and fun component to it. But then also having this very high quality product that we're making to complement it on our end.
I don't think these should be homemade with a cell phone. I think it should be people with good equipment that produce them. But we could do, like you say, you could reach out to individuals that you know. But most of us probably know somebody in that field. And we can't have all of them submit, or we can have them all submit RFPs, or we could just have them submit the product or a sample of the product, some subset of the product, and go from there and have a selection and choose. Go ahead.
Just not to be the evil rules guy here, but we probably do need to confirm that is an avenue that from a state law perspective or any of the other purchasing guidelines that we have that we can do. The attorney isn't here anymore. But we can check and make sure that those types of things, whether they're going to be allowed or not, as far as giving a prize like that, and what we need to do, how we need to set that up so it is consistent with state law. The other piece on the RFP item, I believe the threshold is low enough where we wouldn't necessarily have to do an RFP formally. It would be, it would likely be more of an informal request for bids. Basically, or ideas, but so we probably wouldn't formalize something, is my guess, but just wanted to lay those couple of things out.
Okay. So what do we think? Just so we can come to a decision here. Do we like this idea? You, Sue?
I like the idea to have Rosemary come back with a more concrete series of steps. Is a very good first step, and then we decide if we want to get into, tactics, because ideally you want to have your strategy mapped out first, and then you go in your tactics. My 2 cents. I'm being contrary today.
You're spending lots of money now. 2 cents here.
You're spending $200,000 on a newspaper ad.
I know.
We're talking 25 grand.
I know.
Remember, he chose downtown Clearwater.
Yes.
That's a big marketing point.
Well, in an outline of next steps, we can also include some costs on what those tactics
All
might
right,
be.
fine. Let's combine them.
Okay. So then, do we defer this, and would you have this for us for our next meeting?
Sure.
Good.
Deal.
Okay. The council has spoken. Okay. Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you.
So we will just defer it till the next meeting. Very good. Let's move on. Good discussion, everyone. Upcoming events. April 1st to June 30th, the Dolly Museum Dreams of Dolly virtual reality experience. The pop-up exhibit is a free experience that's available. If you haven't seen it yet, you should avail yourself of it. Please check our Downtown Clearwater website for details. April 5th, join the Relay for Life, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. at Coachman Park. Is it really? Is that really
Yes.
the time? Wow.
It's 18 hours.
April 6th, Ruth Eckerd Hall's Arts on the Road, family-friendly hands-on art experiences and live performances on Cleveland Street. April 6th, don't miss Mouth Council, a unique and interactive experience where participants contribute vocal samples, free from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. April 6th, Look Up Clearwater. It's a music festival hosted by the Upper Pinellas County Ministerial Alliance with area churches and community organizations. This is in Coachman Park. April 7th, 14th, and 28th, Sunday morning yoga with Susie at Second Century Studios. April 19th, pop into merchant locations, see live art up and down Cleveland Street from 6 to 9 p.m. at the downtown Clearwater Art Walk. Get a map and get it signed by businesses for a chance to win a prize. April 26th, last Friday, it'll be the Greg Billings Band and Ronnie D and the Superstars. April 27th. Anyway, there's a bunch more. Obviously, there's a lot going on in Clearwater. Please visit our website and you'll find out what we have going on. And with that, we'll ask for final comments. Please keep them brief in the interests of time.
I think we're moving in the right direction. It's getting better.
Great.
Great, I said enough.
I have a couple of things, and it may not be brief, so I'll try to speed it up. I had the pleasure of visiting the Dreams of Dolly, and if you haven't done that at Second Century Studios, it's a must. I'm not one who knows anything about virtual reality, but my experience was unbelievable. I sat through 2 sessions. I'd love to sit through 5 or 10 minutes of that. It's not something I can describe. It is unbelievable. You need to do it. Second thing, I had the pleasure of meeting Fabio and Chiara Zanaboni. Does anybody know them?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, good. Okay. They have an international lighting business in downtown Clearwater. They're the ones that bought the old jail and fire station and stripped off all the stucco. We have a beautiful red brick building on Garden. They run an international manufacturing facility right behind there in the old Pierce Cabinet Works. And when I tell you it's state of the art, they could make parts for the space shuttle. Right? I just met them at an event at the church. Right? Could not believe, first of all, wonderful people, but a real business that we ought to highlight. And, you know, if we can encourage more people like that to bring businesses to Clearwater, the real estate values will go up. Last, and this is unfortunate that I'm bringing this up, but the party that was supposed to happen for bringing down the Harborview Center was an abysmal failure. It's the worst thing that's happened, I think, in this board, and I've been on here 9 years. If that's a party, I want no part of that party. Caitlin and I were charged with, in our work plan, being part of that, and we weren't part of that. We budgeted $10,000, and I'm pretty sure none of that $10,000 got spent, because somebody decided at the city that they would take over that project. That event, behind a barrier, with no wrecking ball, no fireworks, no band, no food, and probably 1,000 people on the street for Blast Friday, a block away. It was an embarrassment. Right? I think that this board should take the $10,000 that we allocate for that, and when that building comes down and that's a flat piece of ground, let's have our own party. Because I don't want to be part of what I saw out there last Friday. Thank you.
Sir.
I'm continuing my controversial comments today. And some people over here are not going to be very happy with me. I'm giving you a heads up. I've seen the whole Imagine Clearwater project go into a direction where I think there's going to be trouble down the road. I'll keep it really short. If you want to develop downtown into a place where people live with hundreds of roofs, I think having a large amphitheater with 50 concerts, with lots of loud noise, right where you live, I don't think that's a good idea. I think those two are actually incompatible with one another. So I know that some people really want to go the other direction. I think you should reconsider. And those are my last 2 cents for today.
I'll only add that I think now is it's always a good time, but now in particular is a good time when we're looking at trying to implement. Sure. That, I don't even know where my kids. Oh, hello. I think now, as always, is a good time to figure out what our specific goals are. Obviously, everyone on the board's goal is to make downtown Clearwater better, but I think we all have our own views as to how we specifically do that. And I think that coming together again in some format and figuring out exactly what our specific goals are, our vision is, then allows us to utilize others to then come up with specific processes. I think this also goes in line with what Lena said in terms of I'm unclear as to what our role is, and I think it has to do with the fact that we don't have a cohesive goal because we all have our own specific goals and visions for Clearwater, and I think that then implements what Thomas wants, and I agree, which is then benchmarks for are we meeting our goals, are we exceeding them, or are we not?
I'm good.
David?
Well, I like the discussions I heard tonight. I think you guys are heading in the right direction.
Very good. And my final comment is just I too agree that healthy discussion is good for us. We don't have to agree. We're a board that discusses things that are we're not always on the same page. We eventually come to a consensus and go forward with what we come up with. And that's the best that can be expected of us. Okay, and with that, thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.